In the First World War, many soldiers stationed on the Western Front sent postcards to their loved ones at home. With so many servicemen abroad sending and receiving post, the Royal Engineers dealt with over 19,000 mailbags crossing the Channel each day. This collection of 32 postcards were found in a box of second-hand books. The postcards are from 1914 to 1918 and include messages from a little girl to and from her father, a soldier at war in Belgium and France. If you are watching this and are directly related to the people included in them, please get in touch and I will happily pass them on. The little girl sending and receiving the postcards is Edgar Walker from Leeds. This picture postcard included in the collection might be Ada, although there is no writing on the rear of the card to confirm that, so it is impossible to say for certain. A second postcard of a girl with a similar likeness is also included and might possibly be the same girl, but slightly older. At this time, it was common to visit photographic studios to have pictures taken that were made into postcards to send to family members. There is also a third picture. Is one or all of these Ada? It is difficult to say. Each of these postcards have no writing on the back. There is just the photographer's studio address in Leeds. So how do I know the person sending and receiving the cards is called Edgar Walker? Well, quite a few of the cards are addressed to Ada and bear addresses: Hill Street and Cardigan Street in Leeds. Several of her replies to her daddy are also included, so it is possible to deduce who owns the cards, and then use the census and discover some further details of Edgar Walker. In fact, if we go back to the 1911 census, we find she is almost 1 year old, living with her mother and father on Cardigan Street. Her father is employed as a tailor, and both parents are 22 years of age. Using the information in the census, I was able to make further investigation of births registered in the city, and I was surprised to find both parents shared the same birthday, 18th of April 1888. They were married in 1909 in Leeds, and Ada was their first child, born on 16th of April 1910. Later, they would go on to have a son called Stanley in 1915. Hill Street and Cardigan Street were located a couple of miles northeast of Leeds city centre. They were streets of red brick terraced houses, typical of the city. Unfortunately, like many terraces from that time, the houses no longer exist. They were taken down in a clearance programme, and blocks of flats now stand in their place. At some point, probably after the outbreak of war, Edgar Walker enlisted in the army and went off to fight in Belgium and France, along with thousands of other men. During his absence, Ada, perhaps with the help from her mother, is able to write to her father, and he writes back. The messages are brief and reassuring, with lots of kisses and reminders of how her daddy is missed. The card on the right is one of the cards Edgar writes back. There is a great deal of love shown in the writing on the back of the cards, and it is easy to recognise the worry and concern being shown on both sides. Many of the cards in the collection include images typical of the time, and in a way, the postcard fronts are reinforcing the expected behaviour of both men and women during the conflict. However, postcards were a vital way of keeping families in touch, even though the cards were often heavily censored. Censorship was intended to stop information from being intercepted, and also to prevent concern back home. Sensitive information and even concerns about the conditions at the front were heavily crossed out. Some of the cards have clearly been purchased in Belgium and France and depict some of the battle locations. These two had no message or address on the back and may have been included with a letter or parcel, or perhaps handed over when Edgar was home on leave. Within the collection there are postcards of soldiers in groups, but unfortunately none of the postcards include names or details. This one shows 5 soldiers in a relaxed pose, although they look like they have been engaged in some sort of activity. Edgar might be one of these soldiers. Here is another postcard with 8 soldiers. Once again, this picture may include Edgar, although they might well be pictures of other members of Ada's family who are also involved in the conflict. It is impossible to say without further evidence. I do have suspicions that the soldier on the left in this postcard might be Edgar. The soldier appears in at least 2 of the postcards. The 2 stripes indicate he is a corporal, and I am aware that by 1917 Edgar had reached the rank of sergeant. I will come back to that later. This postcard might be slightly earlier, possibly as he enlisted, because there is no badge on his cap. It was popular to have photographs taken just after enlisting and before the volunteer went off to join his regiment. Uniforms were sometimes used as props by photo studios, so that loved ones and parents could have a photo as a keepsake to show off with pride. The soldiers would receive their own uniforms when they arrived at training. The man in the sailor's uniform may also be wearing a costume, as there was no ship called HMS Grenada in existence at that time, although there had been in the past and there would be in the future. Within the postcards there is also this one, which seems to show police officers. The postcard simply says Mrs. A. Walker, Leeds on the back, and there is no other information to explain why it is in the collection. I do wonder if Edgar is one of the police officers, which might explain his rather swift rise from civilian to sergeant by 1917, but that is purely conjecture. I returned to the census to find out more about Edgar. Whilst the surname Walker is reasonably common, only one Edgar Walker, born in Leeds around 1888, appears on the censuses between 1891 and 1911. Here he is in 1891, living with his mother and father and 4 siblings at the Windsor Castle Inn, which was located about a mile north of Leeds city centre, but is long since gone. His 39-year-old father is running the pub, and also living at the address is his 23-year-old uncle, described as a brewer. 10 years later, at the next census, we discover Edgar's father has passed away, and the family are now living at a new address called Beaufort Place. Edgar's 2 older brothers are employed, and 2 younger sisters have joined the family in the interim period. Beaufort Place was a typical Leeds terraced street between Roundhay Road and Roseville Road to the northeast of the city, not far from Hill Street, and it would have been a good family home even for a larger family. Within the postcards there is a photograph of a woman. Once again, there is no detail on the back to indicate who it is. Could it be Ada's mother? It is a possibility. A search of the marriage register revealed Ada's mother was called Ada Grant before marriage. There were a couple of Ada Grants born around Leeds at that time, which can cause confusion when researching families, but detail in some of the postcards helped locate the correct one in the census. In 1891, the 2-year-old Ada Grant was living with her brothers and sisters and her parents at Eastwood Street, not far from Hill Street. Large families were common, but even so, the family is quite a size, particularly because the terraced houses on Eastwood Street were rather small. Her brother Mark is included, and he writes to young Ada in one of the postcards from the front in later years, but at the moment he is just a few months old. The family stretches onto 2 pages of the census. Ada's older sister, Annie, is also living with her, and she will feature in some of the postcards from an address in Hull in future years. At the moment, she has the exotic job title of cigar stripper. 10 years later, and Annie and a couple of other siblings are no longer living with Ada, but a further brother has joined the family. Sadly, Ada's father has also passed away in the intervening period, and the family have also moved address. Morehouse Street connects with Hill Street and is only a short distance from Cardigan Street. When you are using records to trace family history, you have to use as much information as possible to confirm facts. Here is the parish register recording the baptism and birth of Ada Walker on 18th of April 1888. It includes parent names that you can cross-refer. It is important not to jump to conclusions or rely upon family trees of others. Even when you have a hunch, you must prove each fact. Whilst this woman may be Ada Walker Sr., without proof, we cannot confirm it. There is also a second postcard of a young woman in the collection. This postcard was printed in Hull, but had Auntie Ada written on the back. It may mean this is a picture of Auntie Ada, possibly Ada Walker, or was the postcard for Auntie Ada? We don't know. There is an additional picture of a child included in the collection, again unmarked, so it is unclear who the subject of the image is. Also included is a large family gathering which has been photographed. Is the child on the tricycle one of those in the wedding picture? It is possible, but not proven. Note the little girl at the front, second left, looks familiar to other photographs in the collection. Also, have we seen the man on the left before? Looking through the postcards is intriguing. I have tried to give some explanation where possible to what I have found, but I suspect that, like me, you are left feeling there are still more questions than answers. If you have noticed something or wish to add anything, please put it in the comments section below. These 32 postcards have shed a light on the life and times of people during the terrible consequences of the First World War. Sadly, the consequences were all too well known to Ada, her mother and her younger brother. Sergeant Edgar Walker was killed in the war on the 9th of October 1917. Like so many young men, he didn't return, and the little family had to survive the rest of their lives without him. Here we can see their entry on the 1921 census. Ada Walker received a widow's pension, but that would have been little consolation. Edgar's body was never found, and his name is commemorated on the wall of the memorial to the missing at Tyne Cot in Belgium. It was a terrible loss of life that was repeated millions of times in the First World War. These postcards provide a tiny reminder of the lives of people involved.